the last time we saw Spencer James. He went from South Crenshaw to Beverly Hills, back to South Crenshaw, ultimately graduating from his original team as a 5-star recruit. Eventually, he would decide to sign with USC, where he became a star wide receiver for the Trojans. All throughout his freshman season, Spencer James had dominated the Big Ten, having such a great year that he not only went on to earn first team All Big Ten, but first team All American. But after having a season with a terrible quarterback, and with Coach Baker now on his way to becoming a college coach, Spencer would have a big decision on what he would want to do for his future. Which brings us to today, where Spencer has decided to transfer and he's about to pick a new team. And it turns out that head coach Billy Baker decided to sign with UCLA. And he's ready to get into his first season as a college head coach, along with his son Jordan Baker, who's looking a little extra light-skinned today. But he and his father are just waiting for Spencer to officially sign with UCLA. And they just feel like everything's gonna go great, but that's not what happens. Cause you see guys, it actually turns out that Spencer would discover that head coach Billy Baker was clapping his mama's cheeks, and that's why his dad never came home. So Spencer actually decided that he was gonna go on his own path. Since he was more focused on football, he wanted to make sure he went somewhere that would help get the best out of him. So ultimately he decided to go somewhere that is famous for building NFL pro-ready wide receivers. And Spencer James signed with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, soon after he stepped onto campus, Spencer would find out that they don't have his number 11, but they did have some other good numbers available, and he ultimately chose 1. But now that Spencer James was officially a sophomore in college, he was eager to become as good as he can possibly be now that he was battling with some of the best players in the country. And going into fall camp, Spencer was definitely battling to become wide receiver 1. And it looked like he had him in the bag too, but then Spencer started struggling. He was still doing a pretty good job at impressing the coaches, but at the end of the day, Spencer would go check the depth chart and find out that he was the backup wide receiver. Spencer James had lost the position battle, and he felt like he might never get the chance to be the one throughout the rest of the season. On top of that, he had all sorts of sports pages talking crazy about him, preying on his downfall. And if it couldn't get any worse, it turns out that the quarterback that Spencer came here to play with is not even going to be the starter, as Keelan Russell is on the bench. So Spencer's time in Alabama was definitely not off to a great start, but at least he had a good offensive coordinator who was helping him prepare for his first game of this season. As Spencer James and the Alabama Crimson Tide head into their first matchup of the year, ready to put on a show in front of the home crowd against West Virginia, Spencer would make his college football debut halfway through the first quarter, where he was making plays out of the slot. Bama's opening drive would come down to a huge bomb towards the red zone that ultimately was dropped by Jalen Hale, resulting in a drive that ended in 0 points. But by the end of the first, Bama's offense was back out on the field, and they were doing a good job utilizing their new slot receiver. Because soon they would get to a 3rd down and 4 where Spencer was looking to make a play. So after getting himself wide open here, he comes up with the catch before snatching his dude's ankles. And all of a sudden, Spencer James is gliding towards the end zone for his first touchdown of his career with Alabama. This dude, Spencer James, was different, and it seems like the whole crowd knew that this was only just the beginning. By the end of the first half, Spencer James was well over 100 yards on the day. He was having a phenomenal debut, but soon the wide receiver 1 would start stepping up as well, as he came up with a huge catch downfield, hauling in a touchdown for Bama that gives them the 14-7 lead. And it turns out he wasn't done there, because on the very next drive, he would beat his man off the press again, and come up with another catch that allowed him to outrun the entire defense and get across the goal line for his 2nd score of the day. But we definitely had a little bit of a receiving battle on our hands, as by the 4th quarter, Spencer James had beat his man in the slot before diving across the goal line for his 2nd touchdown of the day. Spencer and this offense definitely had the tide rolling in this one, and that's probably why they went on to dominate this game 35-7, closing out their first game of the year with a massive W, led by 2 wide receivers, Spencer James and Jalen Hale, who both had really good games. The thing is that Spencer was not satisfied until he was the number 1 wide receiver. So he was working real hard to improve, because soon he would have a huge opportunity to prove what he can do. Because it wouldn't be long before they were heading on the road to play in the toughest game of their season so far, as the Crimson Tide were taking on the 6th ranked team in the country, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We start here with Spencer James taking reps on the outside, where he proves that he can win in one-on-one coverage, coming up with a big play downfield that would ultimately lead to a 3rd and 13, where Jalen Hale would end up getting stopped in the backfield, putting this game at 7-3 by the time Bama gets the ball back. And it didn't seem like things were getting much better for them, as the drop pass resulted in a 4th down. And soon it was now the third quarter, with this game being at 14-3. And with Spencer really feeling that stadium pulse, he thought this was a run. But his quarterback thought differently and threw a pick right to Ohio State for a touchdown, putting this game at 21-3. But it wouldn't be long before it was now 28-3, and Spencer James and his offense were fighting to get back in this game. Spencer was coming up with multiple big catches in the slot that brought his team downfield towards scoring position. But it took all the way until the fourth quarter for them to finally cross over the goal line and put up their first points of the day. Unfortunately, it was too little too late, as Alabama would go on to lose their first game of the season, dropping this one 35-10. And honestly, Spencer felt like if he had better play from his quarterback, then this game would be winnable, because he had another great performance that should have led to another win. But his offensive coordinator had told him to hang in there and assured him that it was going to get better. So Spencer was still out here working hard because he wanted to become the #1 wide receiver. But one day when he was just walking around minding his business, he had noticed how close Jalen Hale and the head coach were. And Spencer realized that the only way he could ever become the #1 receiver is if he has an absolutely incredible performance. And he would have a great opportunity to do so with Alabama heading back home to take on another top 25 team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns. Now, at the start of this one, many people thought that Spencer James would have a great day. I mean, he was out here catching passes off his own helmet. But soon that Texas pass rush would really start showing up, sacking the quarterback on consecutive plays, leading to a 4th down and long. It wouldn't be until the second quarter where Spencer James would start really making an impact for his team. Not only coming up with big first downs, but soon he was coming up with catches before saying hey, and getting himself loose to the outside before he would end up breaking off a tackle. And I don't know what the hell happened right here, but good play regardless. Because on the very next play, Spencer was out there finishing off the drive with a touchdown, putting up the first point of the day for Alabama to tie this game up at 7, before they would eventually get the ball back again down a score. Luckily though, it looks like Spencer James has a nice little wide receiver duo going, as Jalen Hale has continuously showed his ability to come up with huge plays downfield, including this one that goes for a long touchdown at the end of half to tie this game up at 14. After a quick score from Texas though, Alabama was once again down a score, so Spencer James had to say "Wang" and haul in a huge catch downfield that flips the field for Bama, bringing us to a second down where Spencer James is just trying to get open, but it turns out that it doesn't matter because his quarterback gets picked off. Now, it wouldn't be too bad as they would find themselves in a similar position by the fourth quarter, but after some miscommunication between Spencer and his quarterback, Texas would intercept another pass. This time though, it was going all the way to the crib for a touchdown to extend the Texas lead to 2 possessions. And after this quarterback and now Jalen Hale were having miscommunication, Texas caught another pick, leading to Texas now having double of Alabama's points. And even though Spencer James would actually find his way across the goal line for a touchdown, it turns out that he still didn't do enough, as Alabama would go on to lose their second game of the year, dropping this one 42-28 at home. And it's really too bad, man, because Spencer James had played great, going for 12 receptions and over 200 yards. But he knew if this wasn't enough to help his team win, then he had to be even better. Meaning that, unfortunately, he was going to have to break up with his girlfriend Olivia back home and focus on what's here in Alabama.
You gotta take this next step alone.
Now that was pretty tough for Spencer, but at least he did go on to win his first SEC Offensive Player of the Week. And it's probably because of that Spencer was finally earning the chance to become the #1 wide receiver. Spencer was finally getting another chance to prove himself at practice. And even though Spencer felt like his quarterback was trying to sabotage him at times, he was still coming up with big plays all throughout. And eventually Spencer did well enough to officially earn himself the spot as the #1 receiver for Alabama. And now Spencer was completely locked in and ready to make some waves for the Crimson Tide. And soon he would have a chance to put up some big numbers against the worst team on his schedule, because Alabama's heading back to another home game, this time at night, where they would be facing off against FCS West. Now on the very first play of this game, after Spencer James was able to come up with this catch, he had the entire field wide open for him to glide towards the end zone for a score. He had the entire crowd rocking, and it seems like people knew that there were some more big plays to be made, because soon Alabama was getting the ball back right in the red zone when they decided to put a linebacker on Spencer. And that was not a good idea, because Spencer was easily coming up with his second score of the day. He had his team up 14 before it would eventually be at 14-7, which brings us to a play where they decided to take a shot deep to Spencer James. Then this ball hung up in the air a little bit before Spencer snagged it over 2 defenders. Spencer James was looking unstoppable in this game, because they led him across the goal line for his third score of the game. And it's crazy because it's only the first quarter and Spencer almost has 200 yards. This kid was absolutely dominating all throughout the first half as he was trying to put up as many numbers as he could. But after he comes up with his fourth touchdown, apparently that was not enough for him, because Spencer would find himself wide open over the top once again. And with all the room in the world, he moves his way right across the goal line for a touchdown, not only giving him his fourth one of the day, but also putting him over 300 yards. Spencer James was making history. And because of a huge performance from him, Alabama would go on to annihilate FCS West 49-9. But it couldn't have been done without another incredible game from this receiving room, especially Spencer James. As it turns out, he went on to break the single game receiving record for Alabama and the entire SEC. Spencer was already establishing himself as one of the best receivers to ever be a part of the conference. But even after earning his first National Offensive Player of the Week, his offensive coordinator wanted him to get right back to work. Because it turns out they had another game coming up at home against a much better opponent, as the Alabama Crimson Tide are hosting another top 25 ranked team in the nation, the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, Spencer James was strapped up in the first quarter of this one, but by the time the second quarter came around, he was right back to where he was in the previous game. Because on the second down and 15, he would come up with the catch before saying, "Hey," and moving his team right past midfield. But even with Spencer doing a great job finding the open zones in his coverage, the quarterback was not able to get him the ball, and it would get stopped on third down. By the third quarter, Alabama was losing 13-6. And this offense was consistently struggling until Spencer James came up with a huge reception down the middle. He is able to outrun the entire defense and get to the end zone for a touchdown, putting him out over 100 yards on the day and tying this game up at 13, at least before Texas A&M would take the lead back in the fourth quarter. And in a game that had less than 2 minutes left, Alabama definitely needed somebody to make a play. So soon Spencer was able to get himself open over the top before he hauled in a huge reception downfield. Spencer James is off to the races. He's taking this one to the end zone after coming up with a great catch downfield, and he has actually done enough to send this game to overtime. We're now tied at 20. Alabama continues to utilize Spencer, and after he breaks off a tackle, he brings his team to the 1-yard line, putting his team in position to come up with an easy touchdown that they did just a play later. And it turned out this score would be enough to give Alabama the victory, their first win this year over a top-ranked opponent 27-20. And it absolutely could not have been done without Spencer James, who went for over 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Spencer's teammates absolutely loved him because they knew he was a big reason why they were winning. And at this point, Spencer James was starting to become a household name with some of the performances that he's been putting on. And after winning another SEC and National Offensive Player of the Week, Alabama felt like they were in great position to keep winning going forward throughout the season. The Crimson Tide would go on to take down Kentucky in a game where Jalen Hale and Spencer James both went crazy, going for over 100 yards each, while Spencer James went for 3 touchdowns. They also went on to take down Mississippi State in another game where Spencer went for 150 yards and another 3 touchdowns. So at this point, everything was looking good for Alabama, and especially for Spencer James after he met this new girl, Alicia. And he was definitely hoping to get to know her a little more, but he had to focus on his upcoming game, as Alabama is heading into what could be the toughest matchup that they've seen all season, with the Crimson Tide heading on the road to face off against the #1 team in the nation, the Florida Gators. Now, early on in this game, it was not looking good for Alabama. The quarterback would throw an interception that would end their first drive, but by the end of the first quarter, Spencer James would start making a big impact by keeping their next drive alive. And soon he was looking to do a little more than that after coming up with a nice catch over the middle and taking this one to the end zone for a touchdown, putting up a score that ties this game up at 7 and seemingly sets the tone for Alabama throughout the rest of the game. But in the second quarter, even when Spencer is getting wide open, that quarterback is having a hard time getting the ball to him. But by the end of the first half, Spencer James had stayed resilient and come up with some big catches to move his team into field goal range, leading to a 10-7 lead for Alabama after half, where Spencer James was still making some big plays, moving the sticks for his team on a drive that would ultimately lead them to 4th and 3 inside the red zone. And after it seemed like they needed a really big play, it was Spencer James who came up with the catch in the end zone, putting up another touchdown that not only extended Bama's lead to 2 possessions, but he was playing so well that he even had Florida fans cheering for him. Throughout this whole game, Spencer was showing that he was completely unguardable from anywhere on the field. He was able to lead his team right back down to the goal line, where he came up with another score, his third one of the day, that was enough to give his team a huge victory on the season, as Alabama takes down the #1 team in the nation 24-17. And thanks to another 200-plus yard and 3 touchdown game from Spencer James, He goes on to earn another National Offensive Player of the Week. Now at this point, Spencer is easily leading as the top receiver in the nation, and he knows he has a great chance of helping Alabama get back within the top 10 if he can just help Alabama keep winning games like their next one at home, where they would be facing off against Oregon State. Now throughout the entirety of the first half in this game, this offense would struggle and it would continue here down at the goal line, as the quarterback would throw a pick that would wipe some points off the board, but soon they would get the ball in great field position again, and Spencer was out there making a play to get his team into field goal range and over 100 yards on the day, leading to right after halftime where the momentum seemed to completely shift for Alabama, with Spencer James breaking loose downfield for a big score that puts Alabama up 3, definitely setting the tone for the Crimson Tide after they get the ball back still up in the third quarter. But then his quarterback would take a shot deep to Spencer in triple coverage, and he still decided to say, "Wango!" snagging this ball over 3 defenders and coming up with a damn near 50-yard bomb. Now, unfortunately, there would only be 3 points that would come out of this drive, but soon Alabama was getting the ball right back, and they would find Spencer James over the middle before he got launched over the goal line for a touchdown. His second one of the day that extends his team's lead to 2 possessions and does enough to put an end to this game, as Alabama takes care of business in this game thanks to another 200-plus yard game from Spencer James. And at this point, Spencer seemed like he was breaking a new record every single week. And things were looking great for him until he and his new girlfriend met his old girlfriend, Olivia. Now, there was a little tension at first, but Spencer could not worry about that, man. He had another big game coming up. He was going to be heading on the road to take on another SEC opponent, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, on the first play of the game, Spencer James would find himself wide open downfield for a huge catch, bringing his team downfield before being tackled right outside the red zone. Now bringing us to a 1st and 10 where Spencer had continued to route up his defenders and make a big play that allowed his team to get right down towards the goal line. He had his team in perfect position to come up with the score early on, but yeah, before he can blink, Arkansas was taking this one the other way for a touchdown. And after Alabama's offense would once again stall out, they would soon be down 14. And things were starting to look even worse after another failed offensive drive at the end of the first. But soon Arkansas was turning the ball over right at the goal line, and Spencer had found a way to come up with a catch for the touchdown, putting some points on the board for his team and giving them some momentum, but soon Arkansas was once again up 2 possessions. And now Alabama needed somebody to make something happen, so the quarterback would throw it up to Spencer, and he would snag this ball right over the defender's head, absolutely just mossing the fuck out of this dude for a big reception. Spencer was bringing his team right back in this game, and soon Alabama found a way to put this one at 21-24. And with Spencer James feeling like the momentum was completely on their side, he took advantage with another touchdown. Spencer had helped Alabama complete the comeback in this one, finally giving them the lead. But he did not stop there after Alabama got the ball back once again, and Spencer would find himself zooming up the sideline for another score. His 4th one of the day, and it seems like he just wanted to make sure that this game was completely over, because soon Alabama was taking a 35-24 victory. And at this point, it was obvious that Spencer James was one of, if not the best player in all of the college football world. He went into his next game against Ole Miss where he ran the most Spencer James-ass routes that you'll ever see. And he still found a way to come up with a touchdown, giving his team a ton of momentum going forward as they were soon up 21-3 by the end of the third. And after Spencer pretty easily routes up this defender for another score, it looks like he's done enough to give his team another dominant win on the season, closing this one out 38-10 thanks to another 3-touchdown game from Spencer. And with Spencer now having broken multiple single-season records for not only Alabama, but the entire SEC, he was already considered to be one of the best players in Alabama history. And it was actually around that time where head coach Billy Baker and Spencer James would be on speaking terms again.
Every reason to be upset with me. I was not honest with you, and I'm sorry.
But now Spencer had to focus on heading into his final game of the regular season, where it turns out that he was probably heading into the biggest game of his life, with Alabama ready to take the field in one of the biggest rivalries in all of college sports, as the Crimson Tide will face off against the #1 team in the country, the Auburn Tigers, in the Iron Bowl. Now on the opening possession, Alabama is looking to take a shot deep to Jalen Hale, and this ball would end up getting swatted down to cause a change of possession, bringing us to the second quarter where Auburn is up 10-0. And with Spencer not really having much of an impact on this game yet, he would finally show up. And after he breaks off a tackle, he was diving across the goal line for a touchdown, coming up with a big score that brings Alabama back in this game before the half ends, but soon they were once again down 2 possessions. So now with 1 minute left in the half, it was Spencer James coming up with a big play. And it looks like he can outrun the entire defense to the end zone, but he gets brought down inside the 20. bringing us to second down and goal where Spencer hits the DB with a little hey, skibbity-doo-bop, and gets himself wide open for a touchdown to bring his team within a possession before half. Spencer James was cooking up already with 150 yards by the third quarter, and it didn't look like he was going to stop there after snagging this ball out the air. Spencer James was looking different. A lot of people felt like he might not even be from this planet, man, because after Spencer bounces off this tackle, he had finessed his way to the end zone for another score on the day. Coming up clutch here in the second half as he gives Alabama their first lead of the night. But in a game where he was facing off against the #1 team, of course he expected him to regain the lead. But after Auburn puts a defensive lineman on Spencer James, it seems like they didn't expect him to come out here and say, "Wang!" Snagging his ball out of the air with one hand in the end zone. And now Alabama is in an absolute dogfight, especially after Auburn takes the lead back. But it was all good though, man, because it turns out that Spencer James would not be the only one coming up with big plays. As Jalen Hill comes up with a play to bring his team in scoring range, and soon they would be right down at the goal line, where Spencer James did whatever this is to get himself open for a touchdown, and now Alabama would have the lead back with 2 minutes left in this game. And it would get even better for them after they would actually get the ball back. And now with 10 seconds left in true rivalry fashion, Spencer James was out there rubbing it in the Auburn Tigers' faces. Because after he comes up with another touchdown on his night, he had done his job in helping Alabama win the Iron Bowl, as they end up beating not only their biggest rivals, but also the #1 team in the nation. Mostly thanks to another huge game from Spencer James, who went for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns. Once again breaking multiple single-game records, and it turns out that he was now at the point where he was breaking single-season records, becoming the all-time leader in touchdowns in a year. And it's crazy because it turns out that this one season at Alabama was enough to earn him the #1 spot all-time in touchdown receptions at Alabama, putting him ahead of some of the top receivers that you can find in the NFL or even at the transitional housing prison in Las Vegas. Either way, Spencer had an incredible regular season, earning himself the Walter Camp Award after going for 2,600 yards and 35 touchdowns. But it didn't stop there after he also earned himself a Maxwell, Fred Biletnikoff, and a Heisman Trophy, becoming the second receiver to do so since Devontae Smith. And now Spencer is forever etched in history as not just a Heisman winner, but his trophy room is beginning to fill up already after finally getting a quarterback and a coach who seems like he wants what's best for him. But then all that would change after finding out his offensive coordinator was leaving at the end of the season. And that definitely bothered Spencer because he felt like his coach was going to stay there and help him develop over the next couple of years. But he couldn't really worry about that for now because after missing out on the conference championship game, somehow Alabama was actually getting a first-round bye and they would soon be getting into their first playoff game. And Alabama's looking to come up with one of their biggest wins since Nick Saban was the head coach, as they're about to face off against one of the toughest teams that they could possibly go against and take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now early on into Alabama's opening possession, Spencer James was getting wide open downfield for a big 31-yard gain that moved them across the 50. Unfortunately though, even after Spencer James came out here and snagged this ball out of the air with one hand, giving his team a new set of sticks, he would actually be taken out the game. Luckily though, the Crimson Tide would put up some points and seemingly set the tone for Alabama going forward. Because by the end of the second quarter, Alabama still has the lead, and after Spencer comes up with this catch, he breaks off a tackle. This man had a bunch of open grass in front of him before he said, "Hey," and was brought down right outside the 30. His team would ultimately get to a 1st and goal though, where Spencer routed up his defender for another touchdown on the day, putting up a score that already gave Bama a 2-possession lead. But after they would get the ball right back just a few plays later, Spencer was taking another opportunity to get around this linebacker to the back of the end zone for a score, putting up some points that by the end of the second half had already done enough to send Bama to the next round of the playoffs. Spencer James helps Alabama win a bowl game and continue their pursuit of a national championship. He felt great about his team and their potential to keep winning over the next couple years, which is why Spencer felt like he had to confront his offensive coordinator, and it turns out that what he had heard was true.
Somebody who's going to do whatever it takes to win and get me to the NFL.
Spencer James, offensive coordinator, was leaving Alabama, and he felt like there was going to be nobody else there to put him in a position to win. Either way though, Spencer James could not really think too much about this because he had his next big game coming up, as Alabama was now heading into the Orange Bowl where they were set to face off against Tulane. Now Alabama's offense was doing okay early on, but after Spencer James' OC had left, they brought in somebody else who didn't quite believe in Spencer as much. So they were taking him out the game on this 3rd down, leading to Alabama only having 3 points on the drive. He didn't get to come back in until the end of the quarter, but after he beat his man deep on this play, the quarterback threw a pick. An absolute morale killer that resulted in Tulane taking a 6-3 lead. But soon Alabama would have this game tied at 6-6, where they finally decided to use Spencer James, who was able to dive across the goal line for the first touchdown for Alabama, coming up with some points that now gives them the touchdown lead heading into the second half. And now all of a sudden Alabama is looking good with momentum on their side until the quarterback throws a pick. A bad one too, where they were able to take it downfield and eventually come up with a score, bringing us one to a 13-13 ball game where once again the quarterback throws it late and gets picked off. This time the DB was able to take it for a pick 6, now giving Tulane the lead in the second half, and Alabama was in need of a big play. So soon Spencer James was getting open across the middle before snatching his dude's ankles and coming up with a play that brings his team well into scoring range, allowing his team to eventually get down to the goal line where they would find a way to come up with the score, hitting Jalen Hale in the end zone for a touchdown. And now all of a sudden Alabama had a chance to go down the field and tie and or win, except they didn't, because the quarterback without his old offensive coordinator would go on to throw an interception that was putting an end to Spencer James' sophomore season, as Alabama would go on to lose this one 34-27. And Spencer James, despite having broken multiple records throughout the season and established himself as one of the best players in the history of Alabama and the entire SEC, he did not feel too great about losing to the eventual national champions, and he figured that despite having a great year, it might be time to pack up and head to a new program for his final season of college football. Because at this point, Spencer just really wants to win a championship, and he wants to find somewhere that has some good coaches and players that will allow him to do so. And he already felt like he might know the exact place that he'll have to go, but either way, Spencer James would have some decisions to make. And I'll leave that decision up to you guys. If you guys want to see a part 3 of Spencer James, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. I appreciate all of you who are watching up to this point, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.